there are three things that you never have to ask me twice to speak about. Number one is my relationship with Christ. Number two is my family. And number three is football. And I have been blessed to have had these three things in my life for a long time, and they are the bedrock of my life. I asked Paul generally what he wanted me to address to this gathering, and his answer was the football transition from high school to college and from college to the professional level. There are a number of key factors that contribute to these transitions, and I will try to touch on them based on my personal experiences this evening. Now, I wasn't going to start with this story, but since Paul mentioned about standing up and hugging your moms and dads, kids, you don't know how grateful you are. And when Paul asked you to do that, I noticed a lot of like chuckling and laughing and, not real comfortable with it. When I was a scout, I was on the road 10 days and home 3. Every evening I would call home to make sure that I could talk to my daughter and my mother and my father. I was at Notre Dame one morning and just had this feeling that you ought to call home this morning, John. So I did, and I talked to my daughter, Nicole, before she went to school. I talked to my mother, and then my dad got on, and we talked. We were both friends with Lou Holtz, and he said, "Tell Lou I said hello." I said, "I'll do that." He said, "I love you, John." And I said, "I love you, Pap." And I hung up. When I got done work that day, I drove up to East Lansing because Michigan State was my next stop. When I got there in the hotel, there was a message. My dad died that afternoon. Kids, don't ever take anything for granted. Tell your moms and dads you love them every day. Don't learn a lesson the hard way. I want to begin tonight by sharing with you a day in which I learned many lessons, more than anyone should have to learn in a single day. When I was a freshman in college, I attended West Liberty University, but as a freshman I was a 160-pound wide receiver. In those days, they sort of threw all the freshmen in with, you did whatever you had to do, so I ended up like being a defensive tackle or whatever it was. Whatever you needed, you had to do. Well, after about 5 or 6 days of this, I am beat up. Every muscle in my body hurts. I've got bruised, I'm bleeding, I'm everything. And one day I said to myself, I don't know if this is for me or not. And so I waited till everybody, this was during two-a-days, I waited till everybody had come back from lunch and started to get dressed for their second of the two-a-day practices. I packed my clothes, snuck out the dorm, went over the hill, and hitchhiked home. I quit, okay? And the reason I did it because this was hard to quit, but I did it. So anyhow, I hitchhike, I get home sometime in the late afternoon, and my mother says, "What's the matter?" I said, "I'm all beat up, I just don't think, I'm just going to quit, Mom." She says, "Okay, honey, go in, lay on the couch, I'll fix you something to eat, and watch TV." So I did that, and I said, "This feels pretty good." And it did, until about 5:30. At 5:30, my dad came home. He says, "John, no practice today?" I said, "No, Dad, I quit." He says, "Pack your bags and get your ass in the car, you're going back." He says, "I don't care what you start, but you finish it. You don't quit. I will not let you be a quitter." Well, we got back up to campus there, and we got into the parking lot, and the players were just starting to filter into the athletic complex for the evening meeting. And I never forget, before I got out of the car, I said, "Dad, you better wait here, just in case, So I walk over to the athletic complex, and it was a lucky thing, though, because the head coach was coming out as I was going in, so I didn't have to face him in front of all the players. And I said, "Coach, I'm sorry I quit today. Would it be okay if I came back on the team?" He put his arm around me, and he said, "John, I didn't even know you left." The first lesson I learned that day was this: never quit. It is hard to quit the first time, but it gets easier each successive time you quit. I learned that day that quitting was never an option for me. The second lesson I learned that day was the value of the hard love of a loving dad. If my dad had not done what he had done for me that day, I wouldn't be here tonight, and I wouldn't have had the career that I've had. The third lesson was very simply an in-your-face lesson in humility. I thought I was pretty good. He didn't even know I wasn't there. Flash forward not too many weeks after that, we were at practice, and you know, I'm like all you young guys out there today. I see you standing up here with your jerseys, and you look so nice, and then you had with your shirts and ties, and it was hard to recognize because the pants were all up here, and the shirts were all in their pants. I didn't recognize that. But like all you guys, I had that dream of playing professional football. Well, one day, we had a receiver that was pretty good, and a scout from the Dallas Cowboys came to scouting. Well, he spent all day watching us receivers, you know, and I thought he was probably watching me too, you know. And after it was over, I waited till the locker room cleaned out, and this scout, whose name was Lyle Klein, I'll never forget his name, was by himself. And I went up to Mr. Klein and I said, "Mr. Klein, you know, you watched us receivers today. What'd you think of me?" He said, "John, you're too small, too slow, and too nice." That was the end of my dream. So I had to have another dream. And I had another lesson in humility. I must have been a slow learner. From that day forward, I made up my mind to be a coach, and the best one that I could be. That Christmas, I asked Santa for an unusual gift. I asked him for a 16-millimeter movie projector. And then I wrote to every college and pro coach in the United States and Canada and asked them for any advice that they could give me that would help me in my quest. I did one more thing. I made myself a promise that if I wasn't in pro football by the time I was 35, I'd quit. Well, I didn't make it, but I did make it at 36. I have a formula for success, and it's pretty simple because that's how I am. The formula is this: P plus P equals P. I flunked algebra in college, by the way, so I had to make this as simple as I could. The P plus P equals P stands for passion plus preparation equals performance. Paul asked me to talk to you tonight about transitioning from high school to college, and this is my advice to you. The first thing you have to have in this is passion. The more passionate you are about something, and the better you prepare for that something, the better you will perform at that something. Passion is the prerequisite for success. I often tell young people to find out what they have a passion for and then do it. That way they'll never work a day in their lives. And it is important that this passion is your passion, that it's not your parents' passion or some other influential person's passion. Most people hate Monday morning, and they hate it because they have to get up and go to jobs that they literally hate. Here's a point of fact. There are more heart attacks on Monday morning than any other time of the week. The passion of a football player for the game is a crucial factor. When I later returned to West Liberty University as its head football coach, and we recruited a young man out of Canton, Ohio, named Mark Murphy. Mark was a 6'1", 175-pound defensive back that was deemed not good enough to play at Akron or Bowling Green or any of those places. So we got him. After 4 years with us, Mark Murphy is now 6'2" and 210 pounds. And I'm going to tell you what, when he hits you, you know you've been hit. I thought he deserved a chance to play in the National Football League. And he certainly had the passion for it. I had to beg and plead 4 teams to come in and work him out. And they only did it because they were friends of mine. But the Dolphins came up, the Bengals, the Steelers, and the Packers. At the end, he didn't get drafted. Green Bay and Pittsburgh wanted to sign him. I said, you're not going to Pittsburgh. They got Mike Wagner and Pine Edwards there. It's not going to work. We're going to send you to Green Bay because the defensive backfield coach is a friend of mine. 12 years later, Mark Murphy is the leading tackler in the history of the Green Bay Packers. Started for 12 years as a safety, coming from a Division II school when nobody wanted him, and I couldn't even get people to come look at him. Not only that, Mark Murphy suffered from that disease, and I don't know what the name of it is, but he had not a hair on his body. Eyebrows, nothing. And people used to come to Packer games with bald wigs. That's what he meant to those people. He, 2 years ago, was inducted to the Green Bay Packer Hall of Fame. I have in my living room 2, and I've been trying to figure out what word to use here, because figurines, this sounds sort of, you know what I mean? So I won't call them figurines, but they're like little, statue, whatever they are. Okay, you know what I'm talking about. One of them is a life-size head of an eagle. And no matter where I go in the room, those eyes in that eagle are looking at me. Do you know that an eagle can look directly into the sun and not affect his eyes? You know, an eagle can look for over a mile and see a fish in a stream or a squirrel on the bank. I call that eagle focus. I got another statue there, and it's another eagle, but now he's diving down, his talons are out, and he's got a big juicy trout in his hand. I call him finish. Players with the key ingredient of passion always focus on their goals and finish the pursuit of their passion to the limits of their ability. They are not deterred by the opinions of others, and they fail to see all the obstacles that relentlessly shout in their ears, "You can't. It's impossible. Quit now." Someone said to me just last week, "I'll bet your pregame talks were strongly motivational." You know, the real players, the ones that had passion, never needed to be motivated. The others, I'm not sure they ever heard a word I said. The second part of this P thing is preparation. Fact. And I'm talking now right to you parents of these players and you players yourself. At all levels of college football, there are approximately 54,000 players. The estimated number of high school seniors who play football is 970,000. College coaches have an endless pool of players from which to choose from. The realistic number of players who will be recruited is 10,000. Now, 10,000 of nearly 1 million. This equates to the vast majority of high school seniors being denied the opportunity to play at the next level. Fact, 50% of D1 scholarship athletes are identified by the end of their sophomore year.